Hello and welcome to this little live event we've got with the Show Must Go On cast. Thank you all for joining us. I just wanted to first up say that talking about mental health issues can be a bit of a sensitive topic sometimes. So it's quite common that it brings up emotions within you. And if that happens, it's okay. If you feel like you need to step off and away from the broadcast for a while, that's completely fine if you need to do that. And there's support and resources available should you want to reach out and get some help. Support Act's got a 24/7 wellbeing helpline, which is available free 24/7 for anybody working in the entertainment and arts industry. And their number is 1-800-959-500. And from time to time throughout this broadcast, you'll kind of see that number flashing up. So if you need to reach out for help, please go right ahead and call them. Also, just wanted to make you aware that the Show Must Go On is still available to view from ABC iView. So please check it out. It's actually going to be wrapping up its broadcast or streaming available there on the 3rd of August. So definitely make sure you check it out before it goes off. Now, Let's get things started right now with a little bit of a recap with some of the cast from the Show Must Go On.
By the time I got to the day that I had my breakdown, my burnout, whatever you want to call it, I was putting in 18-hour days. That on top of a reasonably heavy drinking schedule, I was stretched so thin and so tightly strung that anything, I realised in hindsight, I was just ready to snap.
I was just so afraid, and I don't really, I think the thing that scared me the most was I didn't feel like I had a reason to feel that way. I mean, everything was going so well for me. I was so successful and I had everything I really wanted, and I felt like shit.
I became a teacher because I left in pieces. I was in pieces when I left the VCA. I was deeply depressed, and I felt that what I had learned was that in order to be an actor, you needed to be taken apart and you needed to be broken. And I became a teacher because I started to think, surely that's not the only way you can train an actor.
And it's been those feelings of anxiety that have caused me to think maybe I'm not cut out to do the thing that I love. And just sort of finding my way through that. It's just literally just getting up each day and going into class and just sort of slowly falling back in love with what you do and just remembering it's like if you try your best, that's all you can do.
Did you want to share a little bit about your personal mental health journey?
I went on X Factor to prove to people like me that there is something to live for. You know, you can do something even with a mental illness.
If you walk away from life and stay in the focus of film, you can be it's a dangerous ground for you, if you're just staying in that zone all the time.
People probably think, oh, you're travelling everywhere, it's really, really cool, but you're pretty much alone in a hotel room most of the time.
Writing is difficult because it is such a solitary pursuit. And what happens to you as a person is that you go into another world and you disappear from your family, partner, child. You might be in the same place, but you're not there. And that's because the writing, the difference between writing, typing, and writing, just walking around the world, it continues. There's no boundary between the two.
All right, so that was just a little bit of a recap from some of the folks from the Show Must Go On. So let's bring everyone back in now and have a little bit of a conversation. So Margot is joining us. Hey Margot, how are you?
Hey Ben, I'm well.
That's the way. Let's bring in Michala as well. Thanks for joining us, Michala. and Benedicte, and we've got Glenn and Sarah, Dino, Dean Ray, Andy, and Pauline. So, guys, this is the first time we've actually all got together, which is amazing. How are you all feeling?
Great.
Surprisingly good.
Yeah, it's certainly crazy times that we're all dealing with these days, isn't it?
It's putting an extra level, an extra layer of, I guess, soul searching and a lot of time on everyone's hands to be thinking about stuff and not being able to be productive as much unless you're, unless you've got a lot of incentives. So that's tricky.
Yeah, and Sarah, I think definitely your piece that, like, one of the pieces that you contributed to the film was about isolation. So it's quite bizarre now that we find ourselves, living with isolation, and certainly down here in Victoria with isolation, quite often now. What were one of the bits from the film that kind of resonated for you? Was there anything that kind of stood out that really kind of hit you in your heart?
Look, I think whenever anyone is talking about their authentic feelings and things that experiences that they've gone through and sharing stuff that they've encountered personally, it's always moving. I think there wasn't anybody's story in particular. It all felt familiar. We all have, I suppose, similar problems and similar challenges to face, and I think everybody's resounded pretty strongly with me, as I'm sure they did with everybody who watched.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about the whole writing process and some of maybe the struggles that writers face beyond isolation. Like, what are some of the things that writers generally deal with that can maybe impact their mental health that you find?
I think there's a frustration. I suppose, like so many other areas of this industry, your work is totally bound to other people's subjective opinions of it, I suppose. It's not something I could write a script or a screenplay, but then you can pour heart and soul into that and work really hard for months on a series outline, and then you go into development and you have to sell it to the networks or producers, whoever you're selling it to first. And I think that there's this constant struggle of output, but not necessarily any end result. And I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind as creatives, as we're creating series, putting our stories down, or helping other people put their stories down, which is often the case in the big writers' room, I think I try to train myself not to focus on the end result anymore. It's more about trying to sit in the enjoyment of the process rather than focusing on, oh, this is going to be a television show, or this is going to have, get me to the next stage of my career, or whatever those things are. I can't tell you how many amazing series I've worked on in the last maybe 2 to 3 years with incredible names attached. Just to, let you in on that, I suppose, I had one project that was being produced by Charlize Theron, directed by Andrea Arnold, who's a wonderful director, has Kristen Stewart attached, and it was with Netflix, but we still couldn't get that up. And I think one of the things is there's this expectation that just because something's good or you think it's good, or you think it has all the parts in place, that it means that it's going to happen. And time again in this industry, we're faced with the truth that it doesn't happen, because there's so much going on and so many people and not a lot of space, and not a lot of money being put into it in this country as well. So I think it's just about, you've got to dig in and enjoy what you do and forget about whether or not it actually gets made. If you do that, you can just have heartbreak over and over again.
Yeah. So, like, focusing on the enjoyment of creating whatever we're creating without necessarily being attached to some kind of end result that it's going to go anywhere. I mean, hopefully it does, and that does work out, but not just being, held on to that attachment that it is going to go somewhere. That's certainly something that I've had to take on board for sure.
Yeah, that's the way. It's the only way through, as far as I'm concerned now. You just just stay in your place of creativity and hope for the best at the end of the day. And if it doesn't happen, don't take that on personally. Don't think it means anything about your ability or anyone else's capacity to do good work. There are so many factors that go into something coming into production or getting an end result, and that's out of your control. And that ability to, once you've got to surrender to that and just enjoy the process, as I said.
Yeah, definitely. Now, tell us a little bit about your work-life kind of balance, because one of the things that we spoke about was, trying to make time for family, and that was something that was quite a struggle for you. How have you been going with that these days?
I would say COVID hasn't, it's been an interesting time for everybody, and I think people who are solitary in their workplace, all my routines, swimming, all of those sorts of things, or spending time with my family at certain times of day, all of those have had to be rearranged, and I think that's made some extra challenges. I'm probably spending more time alone than I ever have, and I'm actually not spending a lot of time at my family home now. I'm living elsewhere some of the time, so I think I don't think it's actually changed my work process, and I think the struggle to find that balance continues. I'm trying to make sure that I keep connected with people and have coffees and meetings, but I think the whole process of Zoom and everything has actually made us all more isolated, and I can't really speak to the idea of balance at the moment, but I think it's something we all have to continue to try to strive to attain.
Yeah, and are there certain things that you like doing that kind of lets you escape or makes things easier for you to cope with the work-life balance?
Yeah, I think
Like activities.
it's a good question, because I think it feeds back into your, the overarching topic that we're talking about. And I do love to swim, and I now do Pilates. I'm trying to stay healthy and things like that. But I also, like many people in this industry, are exposed to, one of the things that we do is go out and party, or, we take substances or drink or whatever it is. And I think in these times in particular, I think that there's a real, we've stopped being able to go out and do things like that. So I think we're having, and sometimes they contribute to the problem as well. Everyone goes out, has a big party, and then whatever happens, and then you spend a week kind of getting over it and feeling bad, and those things that make life very up and down and like a roller coaster emotionally. I think taking those things out of the equation, it's a time to reflect on how else we can find connection with people and release our frustrations and so on. And I haven't got any answers really, except to say that I think keeping active in physically active and continuing to find ways into your work and getting support from other people through Zoom, or letting people read your work or see your work or whatever, initiating your own content. All of those things are probably, good ways for me, at least, to feel like I'm positive and I'm still contributing something to myself and getting some, I guess, downtime. I think I've missed going to the movies, things like that, which I normally would do.
Yeah, 100%.
And going to the football. All of those things, those factors that have been taken out, just having to find new ways through it. I think, thank God we've got Netflix and Zoom, because where would we be, in terms of connectivity with other people now, during this period, if we didn't have those things.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for your participation in the film. Loved having you on board, and your insights were profound for me, and I think many, many other people. So thanks a bunch, Sarah.
Ben, thank you so much for making all of this happen. And I'm sorry I haven't come on with, really super positive answers, but I think one of the important things is that we all need to reflect on times. Nobody has the answers and all the time. But as long as we're actually aware that everybody's going through similar things, I think that's the most important thing. Thanks for asking me back. My
pleasure. Thanks, Sarah. Well, I'd like to move over to, I think, Mr. Dean Ray. Dean's here.
Hi.
And there's Sarah. Let me get rid of There we go. Where are you? There we are. G'day, mate. How are you?
G'day,
Where are you?
mate.
You in your little studio or something?
Yeah, I'm just hanging out.
And how are you going during COVID?
It's been strange. I mean, initially it wasn't too bad because I've been in self-isolation for a few years now. I don't know, I didn't change too much, but the way it's taken, like, after a few weeks or so when I haven't been traveling or playing any music or whatever. I mean, I've been recording and stuff, but I haven't been traveling and touring, and I realized during this time how important traveling is for me. I don't like staying in one place too long, and and as far as,
and is it just the connection with the people that you're working with as well, like all the other musos that you get to be working with when you're on the road? What aspect of the traveling are you missing?
Being away. I like getting away and going to places where I don't know anyone, and I find that enjoyable because it's quiet, there's a silence, and it's just, you get to see more stuff. I don't know, it's probably more just the routine for me changes when you're touring. It's very sporadic and you don't know, you get a few hours sleep here, and then you go here and you sleep whilst transit there, and then you got this interview and that thing, and then you have sound check, and then you play your gig, and then you travel to the next town, and there's all these things, and you don't know. It's not like, I get up at 7, I have breakfast, I go to work, I come home, I watch this show, and then I go to bed. There's a lack of routine, and I like that because I think routine after a while, for me personally, gets quite boring, and I get stir crazy. And at the moment, I am stir crazy as shit.
And with the doco, how did you feel that it all kind of worked out in the end? Were you happy with the final result?
It blew me away. I took something from each person that was involved, and I think probably the most powerful thing that was said was, I'm not an actor. Acting is something that I do. That was the best phrase that I think resonated with me from the whole doco. And I've implemented that on my life because I'm like, I'm a recording artist, but I'm not touring, what am I? So I mean, now I'm working on little renovation construction sites, doing all sorts of demolition and tiling and concreting, and so for me now, music has turned into a hobby. It's kind of backed off to a hobby, and I'm a laborer. So do I like that? No, because I've worked so bloody hard to get my skill set to where it is, and it's not being utilized. I think that's disappointing. I think that's where a lot of people would be. They're not utilizing their skill set. Instead, I'm battling through a different industry that my skill set's pretty loose at, although I can use an angle grinder really well now. I can cut straight lines. That was really quite hard.
And so tell me about performing and music and you creating. Like, what do you love about being on stage? Like, what's that feel like for folks that don't actually do that as far as their job?
There's an energy exchange because everything is running on its own frequency, when you're in front of an audience, you have to shoot your energy at them. You have to throw it at them in a way. And they will receive that energy and send it back. And it's when they send their energy back, well, it's all this energy coming and hitting you. And it's it's definitely a drug. You can get addicted to it. That feeling. And when it's not around, it does affect my happiness when I'm not on stage giving parts of my soul to the audience and them sharing, their enjoyment of that back at me. That's something that when that's not there, that gets taken away. You're like, oh man, I gotta find a way to be happy in life without that drug. And it's kind of like this whole COVID thing's been a little bit like a rehab trying to find ways to get my fix, and I haven't quite yet, to be honest. But I have become more comfortable within myself, and I think just slowing down. I'm a very jittery. I speak slow, but I move quite fast. So just slowing down everything about myself has helped, because everything's slow right now.
So what other kind of things are you doing to kind of, help with sustaining, your mental health and well-being? Like what kind of tips or tricks do you have?
I've been going to therapy, man, to be honest. I wasn't, and I was cruising through it all blasé. I've always been like that. I'm a late reactor. So my father says that when I was a kid at Christmas, I wouldn't react to a gift for a couple of days, and then I'd be like, "Oh, thanks, man, that's so amazing." So it was the same thing with this. Nothing's changed with it. I came at it and was kind of blasé and was like, "Yeah, this is fine." And then a few months in, it all the little thoughts kind of came into my head, and it was like, a really, really heavy depression that put me on the floor, and I lost my motor skills. And I learnt from this that you can have clinical depression, which is what I've had all my life, and be managing it, but still get hit with situational depression because of your surroundings and what's happening. And at the time, we had our house half kind of pulled apart. We were redoing the bathroom, and it was just, our life was a bit of a mess, and I was doing a job that I don't love doing what I do for work at the moment. I'm very grateful that it's there, but I kept thinking, like, this isn't what I've been training all my life to do. This is, a means to an end, and just got on top of me. I ended up, getting hit pretty severely. My partner, thankfully, she understands what depression is, how it works, because she deals with it as well. So, and that's one of the things that I didn't scare her off by having this massive low. I have had that in the past with people that don't understand what depression is. It frightens them off, and they just run for the hills. So thankfully, we came together as a team and got through it. And now I'm going to therapy. I'm feeling much better. I'm enjoying what I'm doing during the day. And I'm not thinking about what's going to happen or when it's going to happen. I think that was my problem. I was like, when are we going to get back to normal? But just accept that, it's not going to go back to normal.
Yeah. And you've got quite a solid support network around you now that you kind of turn to. How important is it to have that kind of support around you?
It's extremely important. It's just as important to have the network as it is to be disciplined in contacting them when you need to. If you've got a team of people around you, or just a support network, could be family, friends, whatever. But when you get depressed, and depression says, don't talk to anyone, they don't want to hear from you because you're a piece of shit, you have to be disciplined within yourself to say, no, I must call them. And that's all. They'll take it from there. If you call someone, a close friend that's there for you when you're down, and you don't want to talk to anyone, you have to call them. And they'll initiate the conversation. They'll know that something's up and that they need to talk to you. And sometimes I've had hours on the phone with people of just silence, because I didn't want to be completely alone in the room,
Yeah, well, Dino, thank you so much for all your participation with everything The Show Must Go On, and also just revealing so much about your own personal journey through the film as well. And it's been one of those beautiful things of making a new friendship along the way with you.
Yeah,
so
man.
I'm really happy to kind of have you in my life, man. So keep it up.
Likewise.
Now,
thank you.
I want to move on now. It's maybe just still sticking with performers and jumping into a land that I didn't really know much about at all, and that's ballet and kind of classical, kind of the side of the industry. So Benedicte, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me back. It's good to be here.
Welcome. And so how are things for you and all your colleagues right now with, you know, the Australian Ballet kind of being shut down? What's life like now?
Yeah, it's pretty testing. I mean, the company has responded in such a great way. They turned classes online. They cut up bits of floor for us to take home. You know, they set up little sort of group activities over Zoom and things, and had check-in phone calls at the beginning. But yeah, it's challenging. I mean, I think initially it was like filling in the time in your day because we're so used to sort of getting up from Pilates at 9 a.m. to the finishing of a show at 11 p.m. and you pretty much can fill in your whole day. So that sort of, I think, initial like, oh my God, there's so much time. That was really hard for everyone and for myself. And now it's, you know, it's been 3 or 4 months. So sort of gotten used to filling in your time. And now I guess you just sort of feel your technique and your physical body changing. And that's, for me personally, that's probably the most confronting thing at the moment. And just like with myself, my ankles are very fragile, and they struggle with changing surfaces, point shoes, like in my living room, like all those sorts of things. So it's probably just reminding myself like day by day and trying to not let myself get too wound up in potential injuries or trying to come back in the future. Those are probably the main hurdles I'm facing at the moment.
Yeah, because one of the things that I stupidly wasn't aware of about what you guys do as dancers is just how kind of relentless all that training is and how much of your day is pretty much taken up with your job. Can you kind of reveal a little bit about like a day in the life of you and what's involved with everything that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So like your typical performance day, for me, my body takes a fair amount of Pilates just to maintain and prevent injury. So I'll be in the Pilates room from about 9 till 10:30. I'll do about an hour and a half of Pilates just to sort of set everything up, fire the right muscles. And then we'll go from 11 till 12:15 with a daily ballet class, which is what you do every day to sort of maintain your technique. And then you'll go from 12:30 generally till 3, but it could be up to 4:30, 5 o'clock with rehearsals of, you know, up to 3 or 4 different ballets or contemporary pieces. And then you'll have a break of about 2 hours in the afternoon, get something to eat, and you'll go back in again, hair and makeup, probably another bit of Pilates before you do your warm-up bar, which is at 6:30. And then you'll get ready for the show that'll start at 7:30. That'll probably be different to the repertoire you'd rehearse during the day. And then after that, ice, go home, eat again, wake up the next morning, do it all over again. And in the meantime, there's 80 dancers, so you're in a change room with like 5 other people, you're in a studio with 30 people, so it's just all this constant stimulus and information. And then I think, yeah, going into sort of lockdown, it's just like all of a sudden you're like, wow, where are all these people that are normally I'm surrounded by?
Yeah, it must be really difficult going from that extreme to the extreme we find ourselves in now. So how are you kind of dealing with that? Like, what are you trying to do at the moment to kind of, you know, be mentally strong?
Yeah, I mean, I try and set myself like a routine. I went and like bought a whiteboard from Big W, and like some days I don't need it, it's fine. And some days I'm like, okay, like I'm feeling really stressed and like everything's getting on top of me. So I'll like set myself out a schedule for the day like I would be given at work, just to sort of, at least that way, when I do feel overwhelmed, I just look at it and I'm like, okay, well now I'm meant to be doing my Pilates, or now I'm supposed to be doing class or going for a walk, or it could be like super mundane things, but I just write them down. That can really help. But also I think my like journey with anxiety and things like that with work, I've always benefited from like reading. So I just read Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and that was just really interesting, like just, you know, in terms of thought patterns and how that can help you. And I always find that sort of just trying to educate myself on how the brain works and how we can trick ourselves into thinking and creating bad habits, I find that really helpful because it makes me feel like I've got a bit more control again over, how I'm thinking. So yeah, those are probably the main tips.
Yeah, beautiful. And for you as well, what was the reaction within your circles in the ballet world to The Show Must Go On? Like, could people connect with some of the themes that were in the film?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I think I'm similar to Dean, just especially that notion of, for me, like, I am more than just a ballet dancer. Like, I am a person that dances. And I think, like, I think it seems to just resonate with everyone because it's like, it's a passion what we do. And so you take it on as yourself because you invest so much of yourself in it. So it just, it's so easy to blur those lines. And I think so many people, in the dance industry really resonate with that. And especially like it's your physical body. It's not just you as an artist. It's like how you look. It's so much of it's tied up. So just really being able to sort of clarify and distinguish like those things of being like, this is something I choose to do. It doesn't have to define who I am.
Yeah, Sam's bit in the film on that score has resonated with so many people. And I think also just outside of the entertainment industry as well. Like, I think, if you're a CEO of a big company and you're identifying with that's your job and your work, and then for whatever reason, if something happens that's not part of your life anymore, if you retire or something, I think it can really resonate with a lot of people. Now, I think where I want to go now is to Glenn, who is a record and music producer. And I think kind of touching on, bouncing off what Benedict said about how we put so much into our work. One of the bits that you brought up in the film as well was just the amount of vulnerability that's involved in the work that we do, Glenn. How do you reconcile that with yourself and doing the job that you need to do?
Well, I've reconciled it with not doing so much at the moment. I'm only working with one artist, so I've got a lot more clear space in my life at the moment. Back when you spoke to me, I had probably come off the back of, nearly 10 years of back-to-back records with very little break in between. So I think it's really important to give yourself enough downtime and enough space to come back to yourself and just re-inhabit your own life. And looking back over my time at the WIC, I realised that I never really gave myself that time and space to get back into your own life and reacquaint yourself with yourself and your family and the life that happens out there outside the studio. That's been the most important lesson from my entire experience.
Yeah, because I think one of the things for me, because I was so focused on performing and being an actor and pursuing that, I didn't really invest that much time in other things like your family and friends and your relationships, and also just hobbies as well was a weird one. So I was so consumed by everything. So I think trying to get that balance more healthy is very essential.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Moving to the Sunshine Coast was the best thing for me after the breakdown, because it separated me from the core of the industry. Like I was living right there next to Brunswick. I was 5 minutes from my studio. So even when you're at home, you're always available to your staff and to your clients and that sort of thing. So being up here, spending a lot of time with my kids, going to the beach, walking the dog, that's been the most important things for me.
Yeah, and so what's life in lockdown been like for you guys up there? I know Queensland's faring okay these days, but what was the whole COVID experience like for you?
It didn't actually impact us possibly as much as some people. I'd taken a part-time job, which, as it turned out in COVID, was an essential service. I'd actually been doing some casual taxi driving at night up here.
Yeah, right.
when COVID hit, taxis are a designated essential service. So I kept working. So I was getting to go out every other night anyway and work and meet. And that's the other thing in a cab. You know, we take out, you don't carry in the front, you clean your cab down, all that sort of stuff. But you're still meeting people and you're still interacting with people. So it didn't affect me personally so much. And also my wife, who works at a cafe, they just started doing takeaway. So she was still getting out a little bit. And our oldest daughter, she was already doing distance education. So her routine didn't change at all. She was already working from home. It was our son, actually, Jai, whose routine probably was disturbed the most because he stopped going to school for a while and was attempting to do the online thing. But we've weathered it quite well, considering, you know.
Yeah, and how was the film kind of received in your networks and you know, folks, whether in the industry or just in your personal networks?
I got a lot of messages about, you pinpoint, and I noticed that you use that clip where I talk about vulnerability. I got a lot of private messages actually from artists, and quite a number of artists that I'd worked with, that appreciated that comment. Yeah, I had quite a lot of people who had said that they'd never really heard it enunciated like that, and that when we go to work, we're emotionally opening ourselves up every day in a way that most people don't when they go to work, you know.
Yeah, that was also one of the ones that once that piece of the puzzle for me kind of became clear as far as how much of ourselves we put into our work and how that can then impact our well-being. Once that piece of the puzzle and how creatives have to do that, you really have to put yourself kind of on the line as opposed to other industries. That kind of started to make things make sense of one of the fundamental struggles that we face.
Yeah. Particularly, like I see it quite a lot when you work with songwriters and singers in particular. That's got to be one of the most vulnerable things that anyone can do is stand in front of a microphone and sing their own words, you know. And you know, when you think about it, it's a really strange and unusual thing to do for a living, you know, to open up some of the most your intimate emotions to the world, you know. I marvel at every time I work with artists like that. I just marvel at that, you know.
And your story is quite unique as far as how you joined us in the film as well, because we didn't know each other at all in the beginning. No. Most of the other people that were involved in the film, I had some kind of connection with. I knew them or a friend of a friend. But in your case, you kind of approached me, and you approached me at a really vulnerable point in your life, wanting to know, like, why would you want to put yourself on the line that way? Why was it important for you to do that?
Well, I was aware of what you were doing because you were using our studio. Like, I met you a couple of times, and we'd had a chat, and I really liked you. And you'd been using our studio for interviews like the Dean Ray interview. That's my control room. The Dean's doing his interview in. So I had been watching you, I guess, make this documentary as, like, ironically, as I'm approaching my own breakdown. You know, so you had been around, and I'm approaching my own breakdown. So when I had my breakdown, it doesn't say so in the film, but that interview of mine, that's only about 6 weeks after my breakdown. And I had been thinking, I mean, I'd barely talked to anybody when I did that interview. I hadn't been out of the house very much. I really hadn't been interacting with anybody. But I'd had some time to think about what you were doing and think about, I guess, what had just happened to me. And I remember calling you and saying, have you interviewed anybody for whom the breakdown is a present reality and it's not something that's kind of in the past. And you said no, and I said, well, look, I'd be prepared to do an interview for you if you think that would be helpful. So
it was incredibly kind of, you know, brave of you to do that, and it I'm not going to lie, it kind of did throw me in a little bit of a spin myself, because I was like, how do I as a filmmaker make sure that I'm looking after somebody? Like, I'm not an expert on such things. I'm discovering how to manage my own mental health. So, but I'm so glad that you did, because what you revealed to us in that vulnerable sense was priceless. And it also meant that I actually had to go out there and learn a lot more about, as a filmmaker, how do I actually look after other people whilst I'm, you know, working with them. So it helped me immensely on that level as well, that I got to learn those lessons. So thank you. Thank you very much.
You were great. It was doing it at my home with my wife there, and one of your producers. It was a really safe environment. I felt, and look, there was an aspect of doing it for me as well. It was certainly because I'd had an experience years before when I had quite a major drinking problem, with being public with what you're going through as a means to keep yourself focused on what you need to do. If you understand what I mean, I did a 40-day fast to overcome a drinking problem, and I video blogged it. And the video blog was an amazingly, it kept me disciplined and focused on my goal. I guess I remembered that, and so by doing an interview with you, it helped me enunciate. Like, when I watched the interview, I enunciated things up until that point I hadn't really clearly thought about myself. And it was certainly, there's certainly an element of catharsis in it as well, of, being able to speak with somebody else and share what you're going through. I find helpful, and I'm happy to do it in a more public and open way if it can help other people that are experiencing anything similar.
Yeah, really, really, really brave of you, mate. So thank you once again for our blossoming friendship as well, because it's always great reaching out to you and having a chat to you and kind of, brainstorming and checking in with each other. So I really, really value and appreciate that big time, man. So thanks a lot.
Oh, you too, Ben. My pleasure.
All right, now I want to move over to a different aspect now, which is the beautiful Margot from the VCA. How are you, Margot?
I'm well, thank you. It's amazing to listen to to even that conversation about what people are managing in these months too.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the interesting aspects to your story, I feel, Margot, is just the fact that you started out as an acting student and down that kind of pursuit, and then you ended up becoming a teacher as well. Can you talk us a little bit about those early days when you were an acting student and some of the perhaps harmful aspects to that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think part of the challenge for me as an acting student is that I was already depressed, I think, when I started at the VCA and undiagnosed. I think I'd probably been depressed for a lot of my life and didn't know what that was. And then the challenges of being an acting student and what the training did for me, I was already in a vulnerable state, and it made it more vulnerable. But I think also there used to be such a tradition of, and in some places there still probably are, of teaching in ways that were very personally intrusive, and were very, I think no, maybe I shouldn't say it that way. Maybe what I should say, because I don't want to be unfair on the people who taught me, but I think there was a very strong connection between sense of self and development of craft as an actor. So that connection that a couple of people have referred to, the thing that Sam Neill said in the film about actually being able to separate yourself from what you do. In my training, that was not me at all. It was everything that I couldn't do as an actor, for me, felt like a failure as a human being. And so I think that was really the thing that kind of smashed me in the end. And I left drama school as I said in the documentary, really in pieces. And it took me, I was severely clinically depressed really for about 3.5 years after I left drama school, which also meant that I was never able to go into auditions well. I wasn't able to work well. And that's the problem about being a graduate or a student with undiagnosed depression, is that it affects your work. And then that has a whole snowballing effect, which was that then I wouldn't get work, and then that made everything worse, and so on and so forth. So, yeah. But on the other hand, it did inspire me to try and work out whether there was a different way of teaching people that didn't do those things. And of course, there's lots of ways you can do that.
Yeah, so reveal some of the lessons that you learnt from going through that experience that you're now bringing to your students as a teacher. What are some of the things that you do?
Well, I mean, I guess my pedagogy is just always about speaking to the work, and it's a very fine line when you're talking about acting training, right, or any kind of artistic training, because it's not like you take the human being out of the centre of it or the personal out of the centre of it. I am always there as the person who is doing the acting. It's not like you can separate those things completely, but you can decide what the focus is. You can do things like, say, the body you have is the absolute perfect body. It's expressive, it's strong, it's alive, and it works beautifully for what you need. The soul you have is exactly what you need. The experiences that you have is exactly what you need. Now let's do this process. And so it's not ever about trying to look at what's wrong inside the person, but assume that we've already got everything we need. We're just opening some new doors and exploring some new possibilities. So it's just, and the work that I use largely is Michael Chekhov technique, which is a very holistic and supportive acting process that is very easy. It's very easy on the body, and it's very easy on the person, and it's very liberating, and it's very fun. And it will take you where you want to go without any personal trauma. It doesn't involve at all using any of my story, any of my stuff, which belongs to me and it's my stuff. It's about imagination, which is really what we should be doing, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And it'd be kind of remiss of me if I didn't actually ask, how is it now during COVID teaching performance? It must be incredibly difficult.
Look, in all honesty, I mean, I'm in an incredibly privileged position, and listening to what other people have talked about thus far, you know, I'm in a very, very lucky position. I still have a job. I have security in that sense. I have a comfortable home. I've been able to make a space that I can work in. I have so many levels of privilege. It's just not funny. But one of the most kind of extraordinary things to me, the luckiest thing, is that if you had told me 6 months ago that I was going to have to teach acting through song and acting through dance on Zoom, I would have said, well, that's just completely ridiculous. You can't do it. It's impossible. The one thing that creative people are really good at is taking the thing that is impossible and going, oh, so how could you do it? And so that's been really fruitful for me. I've learned lots of things about what I can do that I wouldn't have thought. But my students are, the inspiration, this is going to sound really sucky, I'm sorry, but I have to say this, but the inspiration that I get from watching their persistence and their resilience, I am watching students doing dance classes in Melbourne at 9 o'clock in the morning in their garages when it's 6 degrees on concrete.
Wow.
I am watching people doing their Shakespeare classes in their bedroom when they've got no room to move. I'm watching people dance on their backyards. There is one young woman in our third year cohort who does her dance classes in the underground car park of the apartment block she lives in. And you will see cars pulling out behind her, people coming home with their shopping. She is completely oblivious to it because she's right on task with what she's doing. that, I think, I mean, how can I not show up for students who are going to show up like that? I mean, it's such an incredible privilege. And I also think, and God hope we've got an industry. I don't believe that you can actually kill artistic work. It will come back when we can all be together. But what I do think is that the young people who are training at the moment, in wherever you are, in whatever school, in whatever classes, this experience is going to make you so much better equipped for dealing with the difficulty and fragility and stresses of being a performer, because you are working under impossible circumstances and you're doing your work. And I've seen work happen this semester amongst my students that is some of the best work I have ever seen. So it's really, and that's what, that's the best of what we can do as human beings, I think, and as artists. So it's actually been,
that's incredible
to be in that position, really.
Yeah, it's how resilient are those, young artists by doing that. Incredible. Somebody else that does a lot of work of mentoring people and students is Pauline Clague, who is a film producer. Hey, Pauline, how are you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
You've got some artists in the next rooms doing animation or something right now, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, little young ones doing animation. I'm up home, so it's really lovely. I'm really close to the Clarence River, just out the window. So it's nice to be home. We thought we'd do it before lockdown happens again, if it happens. But I've been like...
So you're thinking you guys might go back to lockdown, yeah? And how are you preparing for that?
Preparing just in case. We've got to all prepare. Be smart. Yeah. But I've been busier, I think, which is weird to say because I'm a workaholic anyway. But I've been busier since COVID. The thing that mentally affected me more was Black Lives Matter, because it was a strain on our community, and how to deal with that. Sorry, I've got emotional.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think COVID has helped to create a new community for me, because I do a whole lot of cooking on Friday nights, and I drop that around to elders at ARPA and some of my interns that I've mentored over the last couple of years have found it hard to get jobs, and so I've been feeding them, making big pies for a week's worth of food for them, and just doing stuff that sort of kind of keeps them connected to the industry in some shape or form.
So what about the Black Lives Matter kind of... No, not at all. What about that do you think that people aren't kind of getting, particularly on the impact to, the well-being of Indigenous folks as well?
I think I think the heart is very strong. People just sort of kind of bombarded with what can we do, what can we do, what can we do? And I remember saying to Monica Davidson one day, I get that you need help, but sometimes we just need to breathe. Like, what you have to remember is that it is 430 odd people that have passed away in custody here in Australia, and it means a lot and it's triggering. But it's more triggering for me because there's an uncle that's passed away in custody. There's a cousin that's passed away. There's a young girl that passed away in custody that was close to our family. So, it's not just about a number, it's about feelings. And on top of it, how do we make the actions work in a time of isolation when we need community to surround and support each other? It's really challenging in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and what I know about from working with you many, many years ago is just that beautiful caring and nurturing ability that you have as a human, let alone as a professional. So taking on board, all those kind of feelings as you're navigating through this must be really difficult.
Yeah, and I think it's also that thing of, even as a producer, people always say to me, I use the word we a lot, and they go, who's the we? Because it's just you, which is true. But it's a part of, that sense of, especially also as an Indigenous person, we think in we a lot, because you're not just doing the action for your own, for yourself, but for the community and for the next generation. And so that sense of family, that my job as a producer is not just about making sure that people get their job done, but making sure that they're right while they're getting their job done. So, not having, it's important to make sure that you guys are all safe so that you can do the best for your ability and for who you are.
And so what do you do to maintain your own kind of positive mental health? Like, what are some of the things that you do? Because you're caring about other people so much, but what is it that you can do for yourself?
So the latest thing that I'm doing is there's an Aboriginal nursery just down the road at La Perouse near my work, and I've been collecting leaves, like native leaves, and turning them into chocolates. So I've been making like lemon myrtle curd and white chocolate and strawberry gum chocolate truffles and all. I don't know. It's just something really different, and people, I like the enjoyment of handing them out to people, and people go, "Oh my God, you should be a chef." It's like, no, it's a part of that stepping away and giving.
Yeah, watch out, MasterChef season 13.
No, never.
Well, I'm so glad to have you in my life, Pauline. Like, you're an incredible force of nature and such a beautiful, beautiful soul as well. And thank you for everything you've been doing, spreading the word about mental health and well-being in the industry, and all your personal support as well. It really means a lot. So thanks. Where do we want to go now? Let's go to Andy Saunders. Where are you, Andy?
I'm up in beautiful downtown Wallaby Point. How are you, Ben? And hello, everyone else.
Wallaby Point. Where the heck is that?
It's on the mid-north coast of New South Wales, beautiful Biripi country.
Okay, and what's going up there? What's going down there in the hood at the moment?
The rain it's pretty much biblical at the moment. It's really, really heavy. It's torrential. My yard is full. So I have a pool at the moment, which is awesome.
Well, that's good. Getting a pool for free. You can't complain about that.
Tell me about it. Yeah, I could make a joke about that, but I won't.
So tell me, what was the kind of reaction to the film, like amongst your kind of community and your family and your networks?
Really
how did it resonate?
No, it really resonated quite well and deeply. I think, we always say when you're going through tough times, you think it's a very insular type of process and experience, but really, when it only takes one friend to actually, or one person, one family member to actually, help you through that and understand what you're going through. And being a performer, I think it's that constant need or want to not just improve but to impress. And I think that's, for me, that's what it is. As well as being on the road and being away from family, I think that gets me down a fair bit. That 23 hours in the lead up to a performance, it's boring, and that's no reflection on the towns and places I visit. It's just I walk the towns like a zombie, but end up in a lonely hotel room. But then, you become a little bit creative and you rewrite jokes and you try and go on, and you can only FaceTime your family before they sort of go, I have to go away and do something now because I'm at home. But, being a performer it can be tough when you've got family, human life, and small kids.
And since the documentary, since our interview that I spoke to you, you went off and had a whole completely different kind of entertainment experience by being in The Block. What was that like for you?
I was hearing Dean talk about getting on the tools, and I was like, oh man, I started getting all fidgety and shaking. I've been trying to block, so to speak, pardon the pun, that out of my mind, because it was a lot of work, but it was an amazing experience. I wouldn't swap it for anything. And if you asked me when I was on The Block, would you do it again? Or you got to the end of that sentence, I would have said no. But now I'd have to say I would, because it's an experience that you can't, you couldn't. You couldn't do anywhere else. I mean, I know it's reality TV, but all the work was real, and it was very, very hard. It was 102 days of non-stop work with no days off, at an average of 20 hours physical labour a day. It was, it was.
And what was that like on your mental health and well-being?
Well, firstly, physically, it was hideous. And I'm a fairly fit guy, but I had to rest for a month afterwards, and I think I still have some minor knee problems, but that could be from surfing. But mentally, it was unbelievably challenging, because not only I was trying to be a responsible, representation for my family, and show my kids, what you can really be capable of, but also as an Aboriginal Indigenous male in a country like this, I had that in the back of my mind as well, and trying to represent that way as well.
Yeah. And you being a comedian, you would have been used to, I guess, maybe the perceptions that you might be portrayed on screen, and dealing with the public. But a lot of the other folks on the show, haven't been involved in our industry at all. How do you think they went with all that kind of exposure? And do you think they were prepared for it?
Well, look, it's being a comedian, you could read some of the comments under some of your jokes, and you would believe that people hate jokes, especially this one I told. And I think observations about things, especially things that are the hard issues, that are created into a joke and then translated into a message, can really divide your audience, but they're necessary as well. And whether that, it does concern me when I read some of the comments, but it also inspires me, because they create dialogue and conversation, and help move the human race in the right direction. As far as the cast of The Block goes, I think they were new to having this much exposure, and in this day and age, you've got a platform where everyone has an opinion, and they're allowed to have it, and regardless of how attacking it may be, you still can't protect yourself from that. I think that's where you have to have those pre-conversations, and talk to your family and your close friends, and make sure that you have that support around you. Make sure that that these comments are from people that really don't know you, and they are from people who may or may not have problems going on in their life as well.
That's a really good point, because sometimes we can kind of jump on certain behaviours or comments or things and kind of get angry or whatever. But if we just take pause for a second and kind of realise, maybe they've got some crap going on in their life that made them have to reach out in that way. It's a really interesting point. What else do you do to kind of maintain your kind of mental health and well-being, like as far as exercise or any other kind of things? What do you get up to down that way?
We are a really creative family. I actually, we've got 4 kids in this household. They're all very creative, as well as my wife. She's constantly creating, and so the only time I get to write jokes is when I'm on the road or actually on stage. So that's the only time I get to write jokes. I'm kidding. I do get time, but we keep each other busy, you know, trying to one-up each other, either on dance night Fridays, or, you know, we do sketches and stuff like that. And I hate all of this no touching, you know, and you can't touch and you've got to keep your distance, and, you know, you're being targeted and watched and sometimes blamed for stuff you don't really do. But I don't want to talk about marriage this whole time, Ben. I think COVID-19 is bad too.
Oh, you're a classic. Now, I think I just want to remind the folks out there that are watching us, if you've got a question at all, just put it in the little chat window and we can maybe try to get to some of those questions throughout the last few minutes of this. And one other area I just wanted to delve into, we had some pretty amazing supporting cast in the show must go on, and they couldn't be all with us today because there's, for various reasons, but also this software for the thing that I'm using would only allow a certain number of people. But I got a couple of them to record a message and send to us, so I'll show you that now.
I'm Susan Cooper.
Hi everyone, it's Martin Dingwall here.
Hello to all. We are Glenys and Ray Steele.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for asking me to make a little video. I feel really chuffed about that. I was a one scene wonder in the doco.
We were glad to have a small part in the show.
We are very proud of our son Ben.
My little Famine and the Feast talk apparently touched quite a few people. Lots of people actually have mentioned to me that it was the fact that I referred to normal people that made them laugh.
This documentary is fantastic. I howled and howled and howled when I first saw it.
Well done to the team for producing The Show Must Go On, which is a well-needed topic to highlight.
The impact of it has just been absolutely massive. And even just the fact that people can feel like they're not alone.
I actually had thought that it would have an impact, not only, of course, on industry people, but raise awareness about the challenges of our industry to non-industry people.
Obviously, we're having a bit of a longer famine at the moment than we would normally have, but, you know, we have to have faith in the cycle of famine and feast that hopefully it'll come back again.
On an energetic level, the COVID thing, I think, is actually a response from a mass cry for relief. I actually tend to think, and I think in these etheric ways, that, you know, en masse, we subconsciously were just caught up in a grind and a system that wasn't serving. And we were just like, give us a day, give us 10 minutes off. Give us a week off, just give us 2 weeks to ourselves. And, you know, the energetic world responds and says, okay, let's grind everything to a halt.
And in terms of how we're coping in COVID, we are really busy helping creative people to navigate the business and financial aspects of what's happening at the moment.
Let's enjoy that time. We're all creatives. There's a lot of stuff for us to be cooking away at, you know, creative scaffolding for us to be putting together for the next thing. The world is going to come back to some form of normal. I don't think we want the normal. And I just think we'd be mindful to just go, well, not be in so much of a hurry to get back to normal. We're just going to go, right, what can we build from here?
And so maybe more of an industry, it is continuing to show our vulnerability so that people realise we are human, we are passionate, we are sensitive, and we are subject to high degrees of anxiety and depression. So to everyone who's actually struggling at the moment in our industry and otherwise through these terrible times, I wish you good health and please take care. And please keep the conversation going. Let's keep talking about mental health. It's really, really important. Thank you.
All right, gang.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Goodbye. We didn't say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Mum and Dad, they're a classic. Now, I want to bring in another member of my family. Not my immediate family necessarily, but someone that I think is really close. Is Michala Banas. Thank you for joining us, gorgeous.
Oh, darling.
I love you. You're amazing.
I love you.
Thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure.
How are you feeling?
I'm pretty good. I'm on Bunurong land here in Melbourne, and we're back in lockdown, and it is what it is. But it's weird. I feel really fortunate in a lot of ways, as much as I don't have any work and it's a bit of a tough time. I'm still managing somehow to find the positives. I'm safe. I'm well. I really like my house. I really love spending time with my husband. And I think a lot of people can't say that right now. And so I feel really lucky in a lot of ways. But I'm really happy that we're all having this conversation. The only thing I'm really, really hating is not being able to hug anybody. I love a hug.
That kind of physical, tactile, and particularly, I guess, folks in the industry as well, we're so you hug people and you kiss them goodbye and hello and things like that. So I think that kind of tactileness is lacking as well. Yeah.
And I think hugs are good for your mental health. It's been proven that hugs are important for our mental well-being. So that's the only thing I'm really going, when can we get that back? I know we can't, and we need to do the right thing and be safe, and I'm respecting that. But yeah, hugs for everyone, virtual hugs for everyone today anyway.
Yeah. So what are you doing to kind of maintain your kind of mental health and strengthen your well-being, during this second lockdown in Melbourne that we're having?
It's funny, I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about how we both have this kind of this weird push and pull of feeling really jealous and bitter of the rest of the country being able to go out and do stuff. And my dad's sending me pictures from the Whitsundays right now, and they're on an island, and I'm like, damn you. But the other side of that is this hopefulness as well of, look, we can, if we do the right things and we respectful of what needs to be done right now, we can get back to that. And seeing the rest of the country do that is hopeful. So that's something. There's this kind of push and pull between jealousy and hope. But I actually, one of the best things that's happened to me during this interesting time is that I started doing Tai Chi. I've never really exercised in my life, and a friend of mine who's a stunt and flight coordinator is a Tai Chi teacher, and said, I'll just do an online class for a bunch of mates. And so 4 times a week I do an hour and a half of Tai Chi every morning, and it's been brilliant, and it's been really good for my mental well-being. I feel very centered, and I feel calm because I can sort of operate on quite an anxious level, and so it's been really really good for me.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, we've got a little question here, and I don't know if it's for you at all, Michala, and you might be able to enlighten me if it is, but we've got Cooper the Kelpie saying, how important is it to have a dog in your life through tough times?
I mean,
does that make sense to you?
Look, yes, my husband and I got a puppy 1 week ago. Like a lot of people in COVID, when in panic bought a dog. No, we've wanted to have a pet for a very, very long time, and just it was never the right time for us, and that's one of the blessings of this isolation period, is that we can be at home to bond with a pet and to do some training so that he can cope when we aren't with him all the time, but sort of like some people have been saying, well, certainly Martin touched in that little package you showed about how it's never going to go back to normal, and that's probably a good thing. So the way that my husband and I work will probably mean we're at home more anyway. So look, I think animals are really incredibly important for people's well-being. he's certainly changed my focus a lot. It's less about me and more about the puppy at the moment. But caring for, you know, if you're on your own, which I was for a very long time, you know, and I didn't have a pet, and I wish that I'd done this sooner. But having to care for something else and having that company, and they sense things. Like, animals are really, really intuitive, incredible beings, and they can sense when you're not okay, and they adjust accordingly. It's really quite extraordinary. So if you have room for an animal in your life, please rescue if you can. There was no option for us to rescue at the moment. It appears that's been very popular, which is wonderful. But yeah, rescue, have something that's outside of, that just brings you outside of yourself, because I can get quite busy in my brain, and having a pet, I've found so far, has taken me out of that a bit.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, my dog Buddy, which was in the film.
Oh,
he
I
was
love.
in the film. Yeah.
He's the most delightful pet. He's so gorgeous, your dog. I love him. Sorry, yes, continue.
Yeah, no, having him certainly gives me that kind of routine. You know, he has certain things that he likes to do. He wakes up, has a stretch, wants to go for a pee outside, wants his food, wants to go for a walk, and then he chills for a bit, and then he wants to play. So I think they offer that kind of routine, which I think is really helpful, particularly in these times when we are in lockdown, and it's an excuse to get out and exercise as well.
On those days when you know, a lot of the people that you've been talking to today and that you've spoken to in the film have had these days where you can't get out of bed, you're really struggling to even function. You have to get out of bed to take the dog out to the toilet. You have to get out of bed to walk it and feed it. And even if that's the only thing you get out of bed for, you've got out of bed. You know, so there is something to be said for that too.
Yeah, 100%. And I think as well, like for lockdown at the moment, the other kind of physical things that I'd normally be able to do, going to the gym and surfing, I can't do. So this is one of the only things that I can kind of do right now to kind of, you know, clear my head and have a bit of alone time, but also shared time with my puppy as well.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
So Mickey, tell us a little bit about your story in The Show Must Go On, where you kind of beautifully and courageously kind of reveal your struggles with depression at the height of your fame. Can you speak a little bit more about that whole experience for you and what it felt like, if you felt like talking about that right now?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm an open book, as you well know. I mean, it was. To be honest, it was quite a fog, actually, because it was such a really difficult and awful time. And I can't remember what I said, whether I said this in the film or not, but at one point I crawled on my hands and knees from my car to my dad's front door, which would have been just devastating for him. But I couldn't even function properly. And I was filming a television series at the time. I don't know how I did that. So I'm actually fiercely proud of myself for managing to do my job through such a difficult time. It's all quite blurry, if I'm honest with you, Ben. Depression can leave you in quite a fog, and you know, the lack of being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I know it sounds totally cheesy, but that's how it feels. This constant sense of dread, it was for me, a constant sense of dread. But it's interesting, I feel like, and obviously I'm not a psychologist, but the more I've delved into this stuff for myself and started educating myself about my emotional world and my mental health, depression is such a individual thing, as well as it being something that we all share. There's no one thing that works for everybody. Obviously, with things like exercise, having conversations and therapy, you know, there's lots of things that are blanket things that do work across the board. But I think you have to find what works for you, whether, you know, what kind of therapy works for you. But it takes work. It does take effort and work. I think we often at the moment want to fix things quickly. I know I do. And when you're feeling like that, you want a quick fix because you just want to not feel like that anymore because it's the worst. But There isn't really a quick fix, unfortunately, but I did find that the second I really started working on that and delving into that stuff, quite rapidly things changed for me. So even though there wasn't like a quick fix, there kind of was by just going, I'm going to have to be brave and go into this stuff and look at it and pull it apart. And for me, and I can only speak to my own experience, obviously, but for me, the idea of doing that was so terrifying, but the actual doing of it wasn't that bad. So I found that when I did go into stuff that I was terrified of, I went, oh, okay, all right, I can see that. Great, okay. How do I heal that? How do I take care of that part of myself, and so on? And it's a constant process. I'm still learning. I will never stop learning. You know, it's not something you go, well, I've done that, I'm fixed. I don't feel depressed and moving on, you know, like I'm not depressed at the moment. I feel really, really well. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't work on my mental well-being when I'm well. You know?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's that thing of once you have been able to navigate your depression a little bit more productively, once you've kind of started working through it and getting some skills and tools, getting out of it again in the future makes it easier. You know, you start to know, because I think once you're in that kind of that hole and you can't possibly see a way out, it just seems impossible that you can get out. But once you start to recover a little bit and can get out, and then you maybe, you know, fall down a little bit, you kind of already have that experience that you can find your way out. And I think that for me was really important to know. And what you hit on there as well, as far as finding the right fit for you. I had to try 4 different types of counsellors until I found the right fit for me. It's just like any relationship or friendship or anything in your life. One thing doesn't work for you, it might work for somebody else. So find the right person that's going to give you what you need to kind of get through, and don't give up until you find that person for you.
And it's a commitment, you know, it's a commitment that you need to make to yourself. As creatives, we're so prepared to commit to other stuff, to roles, to writing, to music, to acting, to comedy, to producing. We will give everything we've got to commit to that. If you can take that level of commitment and give it to yourself, who actually really, really deserves it, and put that all the effort that I put into my work, which I like to think I really do, I decided to also give to myself and commit to taking care of myself. And I felt like I was being selfish by prioritizing, putting myself first, or making my well-being and mental health a priority. I was like, oh, that's so selfish, putting myself first. But what happened was, the second I did that, everything else was better. All my friendships and relationships and family relationships and working relationships were better for it. So yeah, if you're a passionate creative person, any person really, the amount of commitment you put into your work and into others, you should be putting that into yourself as well. That's my feeling.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I think
you're
the thing is,
you're allowed to feel like we shouldn't do it. You absolutely should, and you must.
Well, yeah, it's like anything. If you want muscles physically, you're going to have to put the work into it to get the results. So it's the same as mental health wise. If you want to be mentally healthy and resilient, you do actually have to put a little bit of work into it. And it's achievable. You can do it, you know. We're maybe not taught how to do it, but.
No, that's right. And I don't want, if anyone is watching this and is in a dark place at the moment, and everyone that's in this conversation, you know, can relate, and I certainly can. That's easy. I know that's easy for me to say, sitting outside of my depression at this point in time, because it's not something you can go, oh well, you know, oh, I just need to work on it. That's all. Thanks a lot, Michala Banas. Good for you. Like, it's not. I know it's not that easy. I know how bloody hard it is. I really feel it, and I know it, and I understand that. So just take one step at a time. Just do whatever you can. And that's enough. That's okay. Like, I feel like we've put this pressure on ourselves as well. So it's a balancing act of going, I'll do what I can each day, you know.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously there is support out there for you, whether that's in your immediate circles and family and friends and work colleagues, but then also your Lifeline, Beyond Blues, or Support Act's 24/7 Wellbeing Helpline, which is at the bottom of the screen right now, 1-800-959-500. So, Michala, what was the reaction to the film within your kind of immediate family and circles and I guess your colleagues? Like, how did they react to the film?
It was brilliant. It was so brilliant. I got lots of messages, like everyone else. I got lots of messages. I got a message from my friend's mum, just really, going, "Oh, well, I feel like, where was I?" And I was like, "No, it wasn't that you weren't there. This was happening. This was just happening. You couldn't have stopped this from happening to me." And she's a very, very supportive, loving person. But I got all kinds of really kind messages. But I was actually filming Halifax at the time when this aired on the ABC, and I went into work onto set the next day, and lots of crew came and said, "Oh, that was really great." Like, several crew members came up just to tell me how much they loved the film and how much they thought, how important they felt it was and what they got out of it. But I remember I had one conversation in particular with a crew member that was really moving, and they revealed a lot about themselves and their situation in their family, and I thought, this is the whole point of this film. Is this happening right in this moment? Is that I'm having a conversation with someone I don't know really well. I've worked with a bunch, but I've never had a conversation like this with him before. And I felt really proud that the film had, and this is just one person on a set, and I knew lots of other people had watched it and had profound experiences from it. But I was like, that's the whole point of this, is that I'm having this conversation with him right now, and he feels seen and heard. And like today, I've sat here listening to everyone just nodding furiously. Like, if you could see our screens the whole time, I'm just like, yes, yes, yes to Andy, yes to Pauline, yes to Sarah, like to everything. Everyone's a Margot, and Dean. I was like, oh my God, yes, yeah, and I did that all through the film when I watched it myself, and I felt so seen, heard, and not alone. And it's depression and mental health issues can be so isolating, and so to watch that and go, me too, man, me too, me too, me too, me too, was a really wonderful, powerful thing. And that resonated outwards to the community and to people outside of the entertainment industry. I found really, really powerful. And I was really proud of you and really proud of the film.
Yeah. And what people may or may not know as well is that you did help incredibly behind the scenes, as well as being on camera as an associate producer, kind of, helping things, moving behind the scenes and connecting us, with different relationships. So on the record now, just want to say thank you so much for all that beautiful work as well, because without that help, we wouldn't have got the film made. So thank you. Now we're just about out of time, everybody. So I just wanted to bring everyone back in. Margot and Benedicte and Glenn and Dean and where's Pauline and Andy. Sarah had to pop off early, but my beautiful, wonderful cast, thank you all so much for bearing your souls and insights and experiences in this film. You guys made this film what it was, the beautiful rawness and candidness. So I can't thank you enough personally, and on behalf of all of the folks in our industry who were inspired by your stories. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And thank you for being a part of today. Was there anything that you guys wanted to say now that you're all back together on the screen?
Yeah, I want to give you all big hugs. Big hugs. Big hugs.
Virtual hugs. All right. Well, thanks, gang, very, very much. And everybody out there in Facebook land, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you found this beneficial. And just remember that The Show Must Go On is still available to view on iView until August the 3rd. And then it will be gone for a little while, but eventually we'll come back on. So yeah, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you down the line, I guess.
Thanks, Ben.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bye.